Textbook and geography. Welcome back to Sound of Siren. I'm Xavier.
I'm Dylan. Welcome back to another episode. Today is the Round 7 review and our Round 8 tips, which we'll get to later in the episode. But more importantly, boys, Darcy with us, of course. We're in a new environment and it's great to be off Zoom. We've got a new microphone. It's high quality and I think this might be the way to go with our setup. Darcy, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. It's awesome. Finally in person. Done the Zoom podcast for the last year, probably more than a year.
Yeah.
It just takes away a lot of the technical difficulties that we usually get during the episodes, and it's just so much better in person, honestly. Yeah. Great.
I may be partly to blame for the technical difficulties, seeming as I'm the one recording it, but we may as well jump into some footy action, and the first game that we'll discuss is the Tigers and the Bulldogs, and I was actually at this game, and it was just a game of halves. Zave, I'll let you speak on it first.
So I think this was probably the biggest game of the week. We had the number one team coming into this round in the Bulldogs, and then the number one contender in most people's eyes, the reigning premiers, Richmond. And I think it was a really important game for Richmond, given that they'd lost, I think, back-to-back games, and 3 of their last 4, I think. And coming into this week, if they had lost, I think the pressure would have been on a fair bit. They would be sitting outside of the 8, I think. But they definitely stood up to the task, and they won by 22 points, which is really important.
Yes, they did, and how impressive was Basher Hooley during Ramadan, managing to collect 31 disposals and kicked a magnificent goal from about 55 out. And I'd say the only worry for Richmond Darcy is Tom Lynch's goal kicking. 3 goals, 5. He missed a few early on, and I think if they were to lose the game, that the focus would probably be on him.
Yeah, he looked very poor in the first half. There's not much he can really do about it. He kept going, he kept kicking the goals, and eventually started working on the second half, and that's when the Richmond side turned it around. So Tom Lynch could be a barometer for them throughout the season, and if he is firing, they will be firing.
I think when you say he was poor, though, you were in reference to the goal kicking, because he was actually really, really, really good in the first half, other than his set shots. He finished with 12 marks for the game, but I think most of them were taken in the first half and even the first quarter.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the Bulldogs, their first loss of the year, do you see any problems surrounding them?
They played against a good side. I think that was what it mostly came down to. Some of their stars didn't really step up. Jack McRae wasn't his usual self in terms of impact. He still pulled in the 30 disposals, but he wasn't as impactful as usual, and Bond was also pretty quiet, and obviously missing out on Josh Dunkley. That could be pretty important for them. Caleb Daniel and Bailey Dale really stood up in the back line. They looked awesome, as did Alex Keith. The back line started to look really solid. It's just a matter of bringing it all together. Yeah,
Josh Dunkley, so important, as we found out on Friday. Now, the next game, I think it's the biggest talking point of the week, in Collingwood, who stand at 1-6, went down to the Suns by 24 points. And not only do we have Darcy as a special guest, we have another special guest. It's another Dylan. We'll welcome him in. He's a Collingwood fan, and we want his opinion on the Pies' struggles so far. Dill, how are you?
Good, boys. On the Pies, we've just been on struggle street lately, really, but hopefully we can get back to some better form.
So it's a big game in the MCG, Collingwood home game. There should be a good Collingwood crowd, but they didn't rock up really. There wasn't much Collingwood presence there.
24,000, I believe.
24,000, and not only did the fans not rock up, but the players didn't rock up either, going down by 24 to Gold Coast, who have been an interesting team this year.
Yeah, very much so. I think it was our lowest crowd since 19.
I think I read it's the lowest Collingwood home crowd at the MCG for 60 years or something.
Just showing how bad we're doing at the moment. Yeah, I guess it's not a very much of a good help that our best backman is in our forward line right now. So don't know what we're going on.
So you're not a fan of that move?
No, not a fan at all. Really, I reckon they should have made the change in the second half of the Eagles game, where we were just getting dominated down back, and he should have really gone back onto Darling, who was dominating at that time, and would have hopefully just stopped the whole game for us.
And your thoughts on De Goey's inconsistency?
Look, he just needs to step up, really. He's not performing what feels like he should be getting paid for, the amount he's getting paid for. He's just needs to pick up the energy and the effort. Like, he's not showing it at the moment. He needs to show us why he's this $1 million player that he says he is.
Yeah. I guess a positive point of view from a Pies standpoint is Brody Myercheck kicked 4 goals. Josh Dacos had 27 disposals, but the Suns had 48 more marks than them, and that was really the main turning point. I think they were just working their way through the midfield and then attacking forward. And Josh Corbett, who was extremely impressive for the Suns.
I think that's a fair bit of effort as well. To be outmarked by 47 it's got to be a lack of effort for Collingwood, especially uncontested marks. They were killed on the spread the entire game. We know, I think First Crack on Fox Footy highlighted footage of Took Miller running away from experienced Collingwood players who just didn't look to give any effort.
Do you reckon the way forward here is a bit of a shake-up? Obviously, Eddie Maguire's gone earlier in the year. That could be a part of it. But do you reckon the shake-up needs to happen in the coach's box?
Honestly, I reckon stick with Bucks for now, but like until the end of the season. But honestly, I reckon if we don't perform next week, especially next week, is the big test against the North, against the bottom team.
Yeah.
If we don't perform then I reckon he's got to go by the end of the year. Like we need a new shake-up. It just looks like the boys aren't. Really, they don't really want to play for him right now. It just feels that way, and it looks that way. I just feel like we need a new coach or something.
So do you reckon after this year it's rebuild mode? You'll be looking to get in a coach, looking for a 5-year rebuild. You've got some promising young players that will be at the club for a while. Hopefully you've got Darcy Moore. He will be there for a while. All-Australian last year. You also got some young players, Finlay McRae, Bo McCreary showing signs, and you had young Caleb Poulter debut on the weekend. There are signs of youth. Do you reckon the rebuild's the way forward?
I honestly reckon it is, but honestly we're already in the rebuild now, because if you look at the team, we're almost one of the youngest teams in the AFL right now compared to what happened last off-season with the whole Trelaw situation. We're going after some young players, which doesn't really make sense when we'll win a premiership window, which just blew everyone's mind, really. Just giving away one of our best stars to rebuild for the future. It's just...
I still like the Collingwood list. They've got Jeremy Howe and Taylor Adams to come back into the team, who are 2 massive players for Collingwood and 2 of the better players in the entire comp. And then we know they're going to probably get the number 1 draft pick this year in Nick Dacos. So that's going to be 3 very good additions for Collingwood going into next year, to go along with some of the experienced and really good players that I think they already have in Pendlebury, Darcy Moore, Jack Crisp and Braden Maynard as well. I think they're all quality players. So.
You're obviously forgetting the second best ruck in the league at the moment.
Yeah, and Brody Grundy as well. So they definitely have the talent, and I don't think a 5-year rebuild is necessarily the way to go for them.
And a valiant effort from North Melbourne, mind you, by the way, and it should be an interesting game. But let's not skip past Gold Coast. Hugh Greenwood, 26 disposals, 21 of which were contested. And as you said, Scott Pendlebury for the Pies. He's actually leading the AFL in goal assists. He's 15 goal assists. He's up by 4, and the second best, which is 11. So yeah, Pendle's still pulling his weight, but a lot of issues surrounding the Pies. Thanks for joining us, Dill.
I do want to ask quickly before you leave, Dylan. What were your expectations for Collingwood going into the season? We did a tier maker video, and the 3 of us had them as finals contenders, not locks, but finals contenders. Where did you see them?
I saw us as basically the same as you saw us. Mm-hmm. Like finals contenders, I thought we were there, but we weren't. Like we were just quite a bit off. But I didn't see us this bad. Like I saw us almost being around. I saw us losing 4 or 3 games in the first 10. Mm-hmm. That's how. Like, that's my scale on how good I thought we were still going to be going into this season. But, yeah, I guess the cage shook and everything went wrong.
Thanks for joining us, Dill. Good to chat to you. Good luck with the Pies.
Yeah, hopefully we do well. Thanks, boys.
No worries.
Thanks for joining us, Dill. And the Suns with relentless pressure all around the ground. So a great win for them, and they have the Saints this week back at their home ground at Metricon. The next game, it was the Giants by 67 points against the Crows, and the addition of Jesse Hogan and Lockie Whitfield just turned the whole landscape around. Jesse Hogan with 4 goals, and it was great to see him back in Giants colours.
Firstly, big shout out to Go Crom. Go Crom. So, unfortunate game for the Adelaide Crows. They will bounce back next week. Crom is relentless, and Crom will win.
I think this it sort of shows the quality of what I think Adelaide is. We had some teams after the first couple of weeks were starting to put them in the top 8, even though they were sitting in the top 8. But they're now on a 3-game losing streak, and they got pumped by a team that a lot of people don't even have finishing in their top 8 in GWS. And I think they're an underrated team. I've said it a few times now, but I think the talent is definitely there for them. If you look at highest stream team players on the ground, they had Taranto, Kelly, Whitfield, Hopper was the top 4 in the game. And then, as you said, Jesse Hogan, who we know hasn't been the best over the last couple of years, but again, the talent is definitely there for him. And he put it together this week, playing his first game at the level for a couple of weeks and kicking, or a couple of months, maybe even a year, and kicking 4. So it's good for them to get the win, and they're still in finals contentions at the moment.
Point from the game was the atrocious goal kicking displayed by both sides. GWS nearly went at 50%. They got 5 goals, 16, but Adelaide were horrible with 4 goals, 15. Some of their big forwards didn't quite fire. Tex Walker was nothing like what he's been in previous games this year, kicking only 2. Riley Thilthorpe, the second gamer, with 0 goals. And then, honestly, their forward line just didn't quite fire. They were disappointing. And a defender, Nick Murray, was kicked 1 goal, 1. He might have been playing forward, but
just on Taylor Walker, we know he had such a good start to the season, and there was a lot of talk made about how he's on track to kick 90 goals for the year. But do you think his 2 goals and a little bit worse of a performance than he's had so far is just a return to the mean, and you think this is what we can expect in the future, or do you think he'll bounce back and kick another couple bags of 6?
I don't believe so. I mean, they did a great job alleviating him, but in my opinion, Sam Taylor, one of the most underrated defenders in the league. I mean, he holds his own almost every week, and he always gets recognised on the golden fist on bounce, and he's spoiling his defensive pressure, and his one-on-one contest work is unbelievable. So I think Tex just faced a great defender this week, but I guess we'll have to find out.
more and more I'm realising that a key forward is only as good as their midfield.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the Adelaide midfield didn't fire. They weren't given great delivery. They're obviously missing Rory Sloane, who is very important to that team.
And Matt Crouch as well.
And Matt Crouch.
Won a best and fairest and been an All-Australian before.
So if you're looking to include those two, Tex could very well get back to the form he's in. It also made me realise, seeing Ben Brown play, we'll get to it later, but seeing Ben Brown play, he looked good.
Yeah, he did.
And it made me realise that Melbourne's midfield helped him look good, and North's midfield last year didn't help him look good at all. So I'm beginning to realise more and more the key forward is only as good as their midfield.
For sure.
Yeah. So the next game I'm very happy to talk about, and the Saints bounced back with a 69-point win, and it's amazing the inclusion of Paddy Ryder, how it helps, as you said, the midfield. And Rowan Marshall, first possession of the game, was able to clunk a mark and kick a goal from 50 metres out. So Paddy Ryder, great inclusion for the Saints.
While Paddy Ryder was a great inclusion for the Saints, he's not as good. Obviously, we'll get to it in our next episode, but he's not as good for a Supercoach prospect in Rowan Marshall, so I'm a bit disappointed with that. But some of the Saints who've been lacking this year fired, and I feel like it is reflected in the entire team. Brad Hill, who's been borderline atrocious throughout this season, absolutely killed it. And then you had Zach Jones as well, playing very well.
I was going to say, do you think that was fueled because of their training argument? Obviously, Zach Jones finished with 37 disposals and Bradley Hill about 30 odd as well.
I know Fox Footy had an interesting interview after the game where they interviewed the both of them at the same time, and they sort of got their thoughts on the argument that they had, and they spoke about being good friends, and it was just an argument about running patterns, I think. But I don't think it really did too much. I know Nick Rewald talked about how he had fights all the time or arguments all the time with his teammates while he was at the club, so it's not a big issue, I don't think.
I feel like there's a lot of media hype just being built up around some things like this. So I remember seeing last year there was an Adelaide fight, and they were saying, is this the end of Adelaide or whatever? Yeah. And then I was watching the AFL documentary on last season, and they just showed that in the end they were just joking around, they were just mates. So I think we can't exactly take what Fox Footy and the likes give us on face value, because you don't actually understand what's going on.
Yeah, and CJ had his first off game. But the Saints, I think more importantly, was their first quarter, 34-0 at quarter time, and that's something they've struggled with over the last year or so. Even last year when they were winning games in a row, it was always the first quarter that challenged them. But I guess on the weekend they overcame the difficulty of that, and now they'll focus on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, the Hawks, Tom Mitchell had 38 disposals, Jack Scrimshaw had a career high, 32 touches I believe, and James Warble showed signs of his old self. So great win for the Saints. Some problems for the Hawks?
I chose to focus a little bit more on the Saints than I did for Hawthorn because coming into this week, this was a must-win for St Kilda. Looking at the record, they've got 4 wins at the moment. 3 wins, sorry. They would have been 2-5 if they had have lost this one, and I think most people, including myself, would have had them well and truly out of the finals race. I think similar to a team we're going to talk about in a little minute, but at that record with the horrible percentage we know they already had, I think they would have been out, but they managed to win and win pretty big at that, so important for them.
The big thing I noticed for Hawthorn was they must have had, there was terrible delivery to their forwards. So you have Kaczynski, Gunston, Lewis and Jekka, the debutant, all big forwards, and combined they only had 7 marks between them. And then you also include Luke Bruce in that, and then he only had added 3 marks to that. So their forward line clearly wasn't getting much of the ball, and there was only 4 goals between those 5 very important forwards to the Hawthorn lineup.
Up to the Gabba now, and it was Brisbane who demolished the Power by 49 points. And again, inaccuracy, the theme, and it's the theme of this episode, 13 goals 15 to 5 goals 14 by the Power. And you know it's not your day, or the day's escaping you when you've had more inside 50s than you've actually scored. Port Adelaide with 58 inside 50s and only managing a score of 44.
Yeah, there was just a bit of a lack of performance from their forwards. Once again, Mitch Georgiades, Fantasia and Marshall, all very important to them, had no goals between them and only around 25 touches. So that is very indicative of how they can get the scores on the board.
Hugh McCluggage, 30 touches, 6 clearances, just another day at the office for him this year. Absolute
star. That's just about all I can say for Hugh McCluggage, I think. He had a magnificent season last year, even the year before went under the radar, but he's starting to put together another good season this week. I do want to ask you boys, which team do you think this speaks more about? We know Brisbane has really struggled at the start of the year, and they're now in the 8 and they're going to look for a top 4 spot again. And Port Adelaide are still in the top 4, but they've been pumped. And I think they've had 2 challenges this year against West Coast and against Brisbane, and they got pumped both times. So.
Yeah, I think Brisbane. I think it was a must-win game, much like St Kilda and Carlton, as we'll get to shortly. But a great performance. I know it was wet conditions and Port may have not been up to their true self, but there's no excuse, and Brisbane were the ones on the day who just roared their way to a 49-point win.
I do remember last year that Port Adelaide had a habit of beating sides outside the top 8 and losing to those inside the top 8. So once again, you could look at it as them being pretenders nearly. But they are missing a lot of really key players to their lineup.
Although Brisbane are as well missing Lachie Neale in particular.
But I think one Lachie Neale, but then
Travis
Adelaide have got Boak, Butters, Dersma all missing. That's just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's plenty more. So I think you can just scratch this one off for Port Adelaide and then look to see how they bounce back when they do get some of those players back.
I guess it was good to see Willem Drew had 32 disposals, and that's what they've looked for last year. I know it was a tough year for everyone, but this is the form I think they wanted to see. All their young guns from that draft, it was Rosie, Dersma, Butters and Drew, and they're all performing well, so definitely a great future for the Power.
Butters is absolutely killing it on the bench. She's been out for the last 4 weeks.
You know what I mean. As a whole.
I'm actually a little bit worried about Port. I know they built the reputation, as Darcy said last year, of being flat track bullies, just beating up on the bad teams and then getting beaten up on by the good teams. And it's starting to happen again this year. And I know Kane Corns, who's the biggest Port Adelaide defender and even one of the biggest Carlton bullies, but he came out and said that he thinks, for now at least, Port Adelaide are pretenders, and he said any hope of them being premiership contenders has been wiped off the table over the last couple of weeks. I'm not sure I would go quite that far, but I think they definitely have to get a scalp in the next couple of weeks.
At Sydney, it was Sydney by 2 points in a controversial decision, and I think that's what most of the media will be discussing. It was 21 metres instead of 15, but umpires get some decisions wrong, and they came out and said they did. But Tom Hickey, 10 clearances, and his footy just seems to get better by the day.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they've got in the water up there at Sydney. It's starting to concern me, honestly. You had a broken hand from Isaac Heaney, supposed to be out for a month. He missed 1 week.
Yeah.
And then you had a PCL injury to Tom Hickey, supposed to be out for 6 weeks, was it? And he was out for 1 or 2 weeks.
They said 6 to 8 weeks, and he misses 1 week. So
Yeah.
there's something going on. They're like, seriously, they're going to have Dane Rampe come back this week. They're going to have Buddy come back this week after being missed for 4. So I don't know, something's going on.
Maybe
They're doing something right in the medical team there, honestly.
Maybe a deception plan just to get the other team thinking they'll be without Hickey. Let's attack their ruckman.
I do think that is probably illegal, but you
I
never
know.
know. John Longmire could be whipping theirs up.
Yeah, he certainly could. And without Lance Franklin, of course. So
Yeah.
great win for Sydney. To the Sunday afternoon game, it was your North boys who held their own for about 3 quarters, and then the final quarter, Melbourne showed their expertise. Obviously, Gawn had an off game, which was very, very interesting.
Look, it's really hard to sort of take this one in, to process it. The first half looked really promising. We had some players, our usual, Ben Cunnington, playing very well. We had some other players step up. Tom Powers looking like an absolute star. Looking forward to seeing his career. But yeah, our first half we were playing really well, and it was really promising. But then it was just pretty disappointing. They just piled 6 goals on in the third quarter, and then an extra 4 in the last quarter to make it look like make it a 30-point loss.
Which they should be commended on, because they looked just not themselves in the first 2.
Yeah, as a North supporter, it's disappointing. It's happened twice against Adelaide as well. We were competing with them, and then in the last quarter they just kicked away, made it look like a blowout. But, you know, it's promising to see at least a half of footy where they're matching it with the top of the ladder. But Melbourne absolutely killed it. Bailey Fritsch and Cozzy Pickett were both impossible to defend, and they were looking awesome.
The shattering news is obviously Adam Tomlinson. He was crying on the bench, and I think everyone's going to feel for him. His ACL is what he's looked to have done, so we wish a speedy recovery to him, and he's been very underrated, I think, this year in the back line.
He has been important, and there were changes made after he went off. So they moved Tom McDonald back there, and he looked at home. Honestly, I think he could be a better backman than he is forward, and
which is saying something, because I think he's been incredible all year.
But
as a forward.
I think it actually suits the medal. It's obviously terrible with Tomlinson, but I think it nearly works for the Melbourne team. They've got Wiedemann then to come in, so they'll be looking at the forward line with Brown and Wiedemann, and you slip in Pickett and Bailey Fritsch, and then also Luke Jackson, who absolutely killed it on the weekend
and has been killing it for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Ed Langdon, Clayton Oliver too, and Bailey Fritsch, as you stated, with 6 goals.
I think there's a game you can look at like glass half full or glass half empty, because Darcy was saying like he was really, really proud of North Melbourne for having such a good first half, being up 20 at half time, up 18 halfway through the third. But then you could look at it glass half empty, like they just weren't good enough to go with Melbourne when they started firing, and to be up 18 and then just a quarter and a half later to be down by 30. So it's definitely a game glass half full, glass half empty. But
To the G on the Sunday arvo, Carlton winning by 16 points, and what was a high-scoring affair. I believe the highest-scoring game for a couple of years. Yeah. And the only thing for Carlton, I guess you could say, it's the 5th score conceded over 90 this year, which they'll have to amend. But there's an argument at the moment going around that Sam Walsh is probably having a bigger impact than Paddy Cripps. I know Xavier doesn't buy it. Das, how do you see it?
I certainly buy it. Sam Walsh, what is it, his 3rd year?
Second
year.
Oh, third year.
It's his 3rd year, and he's looking very, very promising. And I'm saying I said today in our PE class that he's going to win a Brownlow before Cripps does. So Walsh is looking very promising, and he does look like he's having a greater impact on the game as well. Cripps was running at about 60% efficiency. That's just becoming too common of a theme for him, and he's just... Carlton's suffering as a result, I believe. They need their captain to step up more than he is.
So there's a few things I want to say here. First of all, Patrick Cripps at 60% is not just a common thing through this year, but is something that he's done all his career. And a couple of years ago, no one had a problem with him going at 60% when people were starting to call him the best player in the comp. Through 7 games, I will agree Sam Walsh has been better than Patrick Cripps, but there's been a lot of talk about Patrick Cripps needing weekly injections in order to just get up for games. And I still think he's been underrated this year. Obviously not living up to as good as he has been, but he's still an absolute star. He gets more attention than any player in the competition. He leads the league for free kicks and I'm telling you, every time he gets near the ball, he could get one. But there's so many things. Even this week, I think he was good against Essendon. He kicked a very, very, very important goal in the last quarter. I think he's one hell of a player. And then you said Sam Walsh winning a Brownlow before Cripps, and I do agree with that, but only because I think Sam Walsh will win it this year.
There you go. Save goes bang, and I don't disagree with that. He's polled probably three voters, do you think?
He definitely got 3 votes against Essendon.
Yeah.
You can lock that one in. I'd say he'll be in the votes against Fremantle, but it'll be tough considering Harry Mackay, I think, kicked 7 or 8 in that game. So. Yeah. And then the other one against Gold Coast would be interesting as well. We had lots of good players in that one.
Yeah. Let's not skip past Essendon. And is it fair to say that their rebuild is probably going as smooth as any rebuild could go?
Yeah, I really didn't pick it from them. I know I was arguing for them to do wooden spooners in that team maker we did.
Yep.
But they are looking very promising. They had some good young players throughout the game. They had Archie Perkins look very good. Obviously, Nick Cox has stood out all year. Harry Jones is looking promising. There's really a lot of positives that can be taken from Essendon, no negatives.
And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Cale Hooker, who seems to be ageing like David Mundy, which we've mentioned. 5 goals won
in the next game as well.
Yeah, 5 goals won for Cale Hooker. Darcy Parish with 26 touches, 7 inside 57 tackles and a few clearances. So positive signs for the Bombers, and only a 16-point loss against a Carlton side that did need to win, much like the Saints.
Yeah, definitely. It was really important for us for all the same reasons as I said about St Kilda. And the other 3 players I'd like to highlight, Harry Mackay, again, 4 goals too. He had a kick after the siren that would have tied the Coleman medal. Jacob Wiedering was very, very good again. Should be an absolute lock for everyone's All-Australian team. And Adam Sard, I know Darcy might not agree with me, but he was very good against his former club.
And the final game of the round was the derby down at Optus Stadium, unfortunately without a crowd, and we hope there is next week. Tim Kelly, 42 disposals, and they blew them out in the end by 59 points. But Tim Kelly, 42 disposals, 22 contested possessions, 13 score involvements, and 13 clearances. And I think the only thing that they'll have to focus on is replicating that performance on the road.
Yeah, Tim Kelly absolutely killed it for them. All over the ground, they had some really good performances, particularly from their forwards. I believe Darling and Kennedy both kicked 3, and when that happens, West Coast wins pretty much all the time. There's lots of positives for West Coast, and I believe Fremantle, although they lost by about 60, it's not that bad of a performance, is what I thought.
It's not reflective on the score.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of... I talked about a return back to the mean for Taylor Walker. I think it's probably the same as Fremantle this week. Because before this week, they were in the top 8. I think they're only percentage out at the moment, and I don't think they're quite that good. We saw West Coast, who weren't in the top 8, beat them, and they had, I think, 6 of their best players out, as I've talked about in the last couple of weeks. But to beat a team by 59 points with 6 of your best players out isn't the best, despite perhaps not being totally representative of how the game went. Winning by 59 without 6 of your best players, and it's not the best look for Fremantle.
And a return to the mean for West Coast as well, I think. I mean, no one expected them to lose by 97 points against Geelong. They just need some continuity in their game, and they'll be right up there once again. I think all of us predicted them to be finals locks and even contenders for the Premiership Cup. So, great performance by the Eagles. Now to the round 8 tips, and we'll go one by one. The first game, which is Richmond and Geelong.
I think Richmond have had a really tough schedule, and I haven't picked them that much this year, and I'm not going to pick them again. I'm going with Geelong, but only because of the outs that Richmond have. We know Geelong's missing Dustin Dangerfield, but Richmond may miss Dustin Martin again, according to you, but he might come back in. But they're also missing Nick Vlaston, as well as as well as Kane Lambert, who are very important players.
And still managed to beat the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Very ominous. And I'll go with Richmond.
Yeah, I think I'll be going with Richmond too. Expect to see Dusty back. Expect to see Dusty firing on a Friday night against Geelong.
Yeah. The Giants and the Bombers at Giants Stadium.
I'm going to go with the Giants again. Repaid my faith over the last couple of weeks, so I've got to go then.
And this is a man who said he wouldn't tip the Giants all year after losing to... I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll go with the Giants as well.
This one's going to be closer than what I
Yeah.
think people are expecting it to be. Essendon could very well put up a really good performance here. But I think Whitfield into the Giants is just bigger than what anyone could have really pictured and understood. So I think I'll be going Giants.
The Suns and the Saints, a danger game for the Saints.
I think, again, it's an important game for the Saints. I said last week, I'm going to say it again this week. I think if they win this one, their finals chances are well and truly alive. But if they lose, it's going to be looking slimmer and slimmer.
Does.
I think we'll have to consider the Suns for this one. I think the Suns are a chance for this one.
Yeah.
Saints are so inconsistent.
Yeah.
They get flogged one week, win the next week. So I think this could be a get flogged one.
North Collingwood at Marvel Stadium.
I know a lot of people are starting to pick North. I'm still going to pick Collingwood, despite how poor they've been over the last couple of weeks. As I was saying before, they've still got a lot of talent on their list, and I think that's talent that North Melbourne can't match.
I think I'm going to go with the Kangaroos. The signs that I saw on the weekend from them, I know Dill's not happy behind the camera, but the signs that I saw from them are more impressive than the ones that the Magpies are giving off.
Yeah, look, North Melbourne have a history of disappointing. So
True.
the week that everyone will be expecting us to win, or saying we've got a chance, I don't think we will win this. I think Collingwood will step up this week. There'll be a lot of questioning of them during the week, and I feel like they need to step up, and they will step up. Some of their big players will perform, and North will lose.
Yeah, Buckley under duress, and I think it'll be heavily considered if they do lose that his role will be.
I think being on the Buckley, who's going to stay, he's going to stay. But I think if they lose to North Melbourne, they're going to have to seriously consider him leaving, and I probably think he will leave. But as I said, I don't think they will lose.
And I know the supporters may be on the similar train to you. Melbourne, Sydney at the G.
Voice break, sorry. I'm going to go Melbourne. They're undefeated, and I think they can go one more week undefeated.
Yeah,
Me too. Melbourne. Port Adelaide, the showdown.
I'm going Port Adelaide again, even though I was ripping into them a little bit just before. I think they can beat a lesser team in Adelaide.
No matter what the positions are in this game, it's always a cracking game. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Crows did manage to get up. I think I'll tip the Power. But no surprises if the Crom do win.
Yeah, go Crom. Last year was a poor showdown. I think a few people forget that, but it was about an 80-point blowout for the Power.
Yeah.
But Rory Sloane is a chance to come back this week, I believe, and having him back, Matt Crouch is still a while off.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Matt Crouch.
So if Sloane's back in this week, Crows are a chance. It depends on Boak. If Boak's out and Sloane's in, I've got Crom winning, but otherwise I'd go Power.
A somewhat interesting game. Hawthorn, who are inconsistent and were flogged in the last 2 weeks against West Coast, who on the road have shown their struggles.
I'm still going to go West Coast.
Yeah.
Despite being on the road and despite having all the good players out, I'm still tipping them because I think they're just better than Hawthorn.
Me as well.
West Coast.
Carlton versus the Bulldogs.
Probably the easiest tip of the week. I'm tipping the Bulldogs, but
I didn't know where that was going to go.
Yeah,
but I do want to say that Carlton are a dangerous team. I think most people just brush us off a little bit, but I think at our best we can beat absolutely anyone, and I think we're definitely a chance.
No, we know Zave's future, and I thought he was going to go the Carlton way on this. I'll tip the Bulldogs as well.
Yeah, Dogs.
And the final game of the round, Fremantle versus Brisbane, which if you remember 2 years ago was a cracking matchup, and I believe Michael Walters sealed it with a point after the siren. And I'll go with the Lions.
I'm going with the Lions as well.
Yeah, Brisbane.
Also, if Carlton beat the Bulldogs, Carlton will play finals. Definitely. Guarantee it.
Don't know if I agree with that, but we'll see next week. Any other notes?
Get around it.
Any other notes, boys?
Nothing else for me.
Just a big thanks to Dylan Clark
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
getting
Thanks,
involved
Clarky.
today, giving us the Collingwood insiders that we struggle to get ourselves.
For sure. Make sure to follow our socials at sts.podcast and at AFL Supercoach on Instagram. We hope you enjoy. It's great to finally be together in real life instead of over Zoom, and we'll keep doing this, I think.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. So we hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next time.